Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Power Podcast All-Star live streaming series. We've just been having a phenomenal and historic time here with you all. We want to thank you all for tuning in 2 to 3 times a week and sharing this message with your family and friends. And so we want to encourage you to still do that today. We have an exciting show today, a very informative show. A lot of information that has been going on with the lending process and everything with the PPP program and all of those things. And so we knew it best to bring to you one who has his fingers on the pulse of what's going on in Washington, D.C. and what's going on with literally hundreds of Black businesses and banks all across the country. So we're going to get ready to get started. But what I need you to do right now is right at the bottom of this video in the comment section. I need you to go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're from. Do that real quick because we're ready to get going. We got a lot of information to share with you. I need you to like this fan page, like George Fraser's fan page, follow the fan page. And then the other thing I need you to do is go ahead right now and share this this momentous event, right? This is critical information. We need to share this right now to every entrepreneur, every business owner, every family member that you have that is in the position where they're needing funding for their business. They need access to capital. They need to be on right now listening to the expert that we have for you today, and that is Ron Busby, who is the CEO of U.S. Black Chambers. So we're bringing him to you live right now with Dr. George C. Fraser. Also want to remind you to go ahead and mark your calendar for this coming Tuesday. We have the one and only Dr. Randall Pinkett, who's coming up Tuesday. We have Michael V. Roberts coming up next Thursday. And so next week, we're going to have a full plate for you again to digest a lot of information, okay? So do me one more favor. Again, go ahead and like it, but I need you to share it. Really share this video. This information is timely. The votes just went down yesterday, the day before yesterday, and we want to make sure that you have this information in a timely manner before these funds are dispersed next week. So without further delay, I want to introduce to you some, of course, reacquaint to others, our host for this evening, the one and only Dr. George C. Fraser.
Thank you, Brother Bedford. A host is nothing without a co-host. someone who's got the technological back, the administrative back, and will also ask intelligent questions and backfill and just be a really, really great partner. So thank you again, Brother Bedford. You are a real champion and a real support system. I would deeply appreciate it. It's Saturday night, and I ain't got nobody. I just got some money, and I just got out of jail. No, I didn't. Well, if you consider home jail, because I'm not at home right now. I'm in my office, and this is my office. So this is my escape plan at least 3 times a week. My wonderful wife of 47 years is getting a little sick of me. Okay, because I've not been around this much, right? 24/7. So this gives her some space, gives me some space, but most importantly, it provides us an opportunity to hear from some of the giants, some of the thought leaders, some of the movers, shakers, and decision makers in our community. And we have such a person on tonight. He is not only a thought leader, he is also a good friend. I've been knowing Ron Busby. I don't even want to say how long, right? I've been knowing him because it'll give away my age, right? And it'll give away his age too. But he's an incredible brother, a successful entrepreneur, entrepreneurial history and past himself, has committed his life to and his time and his talent and his treasure into the investment of our people and taking on the awesome responsibility of leading up and growing the U.S. Black Chamber. He is based out of Washington, D.C. He's right in the mouth of the lion. And he has his fingers and his brain power invested and involved in all things Black upward mobility and entrepreneurship. The mission of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is quite profound. It's profound in its simplicity. The U.S. Black Chamber, and I'm just reading the mission statement. Mission is to provide committed, visionary leadership and advocacy, underline advocacy, in the realization of economic empowerment through the creation of resources and initiatives. The U.S. Black Chamber supports African American chambers of commerce and business organizations in their work of developing and growing Black enterprise. That is easy to say, extraordinarily difficult to do. And a person that has committed their life to do that kind of work with our people, with all of our challenges and picadillos, I think is saintly. I think is anointed. And we are better because of him. And so I want to introduce to you, if you do not know him, if you're a business person, you should know him. Ron Busby. Ron Busby, welcome to our podcast. And it looks like, it looks like you are the chairman of a Fortune 500 company in that presentation that you're making. You're all suited up on Saturday night. You are always suited up. You're always clean as a hotel chitlin, man. You just look like you got money. You're managing money. You're helping others to manage their businesses, to manage. I mean, you just look the part. You also sound the part. You act the part. And I was just with you about a month or so ago. Well, it was a little bit more than that. It was before this, in Prince George's County at our friend
Nicole.
I think it was 50th birthday party, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and we just had a lot of fun.
We did.
It was so good to see you. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well, George, man. I am truly, and I don't say this lightly, man, I'm honored and really humbled to be here with you. I have followed you over these last few weeks, and man, you have had a true lineup of iconic leaders, speakers, and man, so for me to be on here, man, I'm just excited about the opportunity. I'll tell a story. I ran the Phoenix Black Chamber of Commerce prior to coming to Washington, D.C., and the first hire I made, and really the only hire I made, was a young lady by the name of Heather Holmes. And Heather
Holmes, yes.
And worked for you. And shortly after she got hired, we were planning on our conference of sorts in the Phoenix Black Chamber. And she said, well, you got to have George Fraser come down and speak for us. And as big of an individual as I was in Phoenix at the time, you just took it over the top, man. To be able to have you come out and speak to our audience really gave me a boost to go on and do bigger and greater things, man. So I am always thankful to you that you allowed me to join you a few times at your national conference. And the first few years, I just sat in the, behind the scenes and just watched you guys operate. And it really gave me a vision of how to ultimately become the U.S. Black Chamber and do what we're doing today. So again, I thank you for all of your leadership and your mentorship for allowing me to be on this afternoon, as well as all that you've done in my life.
Well, thank you, ma'am. This is your moment. This is your time. All eyes are on you, as you can imagine. What I want to do is to give you full justice, so to speak, is I have a little bio here of you, and it has some interesting and important background. I'm going to follow up with a question after this short read of the bio, but people need to know about you. That I did not commit it to memory, and I wanted to do it right, so I just want to do it. I just want to do a short read. Ron Busby Sr. possesses a wealth of business management skills and a strong commitment to serve Black business owners. I think I got that part right. Ron is a former successful business owner himself and has been recognized as one of the nation's best CEOs. Ron grew his first company, USA Super Clean, from $150,000 in annualized revenue to over $15 million in only 10 years. Early on in his career, U.S. Super Clean was recognized as the largest Black-owned janitorial firm in the country. Mr. Busby has also started and grew 2 other janitorial firms, both resulting in over $4 million in annualized revenue. So he is teaching what he has practiced. Having a successful track record as an entrepreneur paved the way to establish Ron Busby as an influencer in the Black business community. Trained by some of the country's leading corporate executives, Ron Busby developed his skills at some of the nation's largest corporations to include Exxon, Xerox, IBM, Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola USA. While in corporate America, he was recognized as the National Salesperson of the Year. Mr. Busby's leadership and philanthropic efforts to support Black-owned businesses has led him to be recognized as the Advocate of the Year by Minority Business Development Agency, as well as named as Man of the Year by Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity for his philanthropy. Currently, Ron serves on the board of Bowie State University Foundation, the Bayou Classic Committee, Fraser Small Business Council, National Newspaper Publishers Association Foundation Board of Directors, Essence Festival, Entrepreneurial Advisory Committee, that's one sentence, the FCC Broadcast Diversity and Development Committee, Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform, Small Business Administration's Council on Underserved Communities, and is a founding member of Black Wealth 2020. Finally, a native of Oakland, California, and he graduated with honors from both Florida A&M and Clark Atlanta University. Ron has dedicated himself to the empowerment of the Black business community. And Ron is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, father of 2 sons, and currently resides in Washington, D.C., the metropolitan area, and a little bit of personal thing. He's single. Ron, welcome. We have a very large Black female audience. It's typically 65-35, right?
Well,
So I don't know if you're looking or anything. I don't know who's looking, but I just have to put that out there because I'm about hooking a brother up, and for the right sister, hooking a sister up too, right? So let me just start with some basic questions about Ron Busby. Tell us about your journey on how you became the CEO of the U.S. Black Chamber, considering, I mean, you had phenomenal business success and you sort of did something with that. I don't know what you did with that to take over this responsibility, but unpack that for us.
Well, I guess, wow. I start off by saying that I was blessed to have both a mother and father. I grew up in a home where I had both my parents there. And I tell the story that my mother is a teacher. So she made sure that we were well educated, and she's a minister. So we had a church home. So I was a preacher's kid. So I always say I'm well intelligent, well educated. And I also know my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And usually people say, great accolades, love you, kid. But then I also say, well, I also had a father, and my father was an entrepreneur, had his own business for most of our lives, and he was a Black Panther. So I say, I'm about my business, but I don't take no shit. So I have been in a family where Black pride, the ability to move an agenda well inside the box. Because I think when people think about the Black Panther Party, they just think about black leather jackets and afros.
A lot more than that.
And it was so much more than that. It really was about an economic agenda for our communities represented by us, and also understanding advocacy, understanding the law and what was legal versus what was not legal. So you very seldom saw them getting in trouble, even with the parades that they put on, because they were well within inside their rights. And our parents made sure that we understood that. So from a very young age, I saw us advocate for our issues, educate us. I have an older sister that's a doctor. Her and her husband both are doctors, went to Howard Medical School and live in a little small town in Alabama. I have a younger sister that's an attorney. We all understand the importance of making sure education was at the forefront of our lives, but pushing an agenda to move Black people forward. So came up in Oakland, went to a different high school or different school every year, because my mother was like, that's the best second grade teacher, so you're gonna go over there. She's a Black teacher. You're gonna move schools, go to that school over there, because that's the best third grade teacher. So I went to a different school every year because we wanted to make sure that we got the best public education that we could get with inside the scope of what was legal. Now today, that's not legal. You can't go with outside of your school boundaries. But my parents understood what was flexible, what we needed to do in order for us to be successful. My father worked a full-time job at General Motors and then came home and did his janitorial service on the side. He had 5 employees, my mother, my father, my 2 sisters, and me. That was his company. He grew that firm. Every evening after school, we would come home. I was running track and doing all kinds of athletic things. Got home, you did your homework. He dropped you off at a building. That was your building. That was your responsibility to clean it. He picked us all up and we went home together as a family. We worked in our family business. I was fairly good SAT score, PSAT score. And I remember going to Stanford University my junior year in high school, getting ready to go off. And they said, hey, there's a program at Stanford University that you can participate in anticipation that you would come down and be a freshman there. And I remember my first day, they said, look to your left, look to your right. One of you guys is not going to be here. And I said to myself, well, I don't want to be here if you don't want me to be here. And I picked up my bags and left. And I made the decision to go to Florida A&M. And I remember at Florida A&M, they said that first day, look to your left, look to your right, get to know each other. These are the future leaders of this country. Go into business with each other, get married, have children. That was a family environment, and I knew I was at home, and I knew that I was going to always have to live like that in order for us to be successful. As I said, I worked in corporate America quite a while and was always doing fairly well, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And my last corporate job was at Coca-Cola. Our largest client at Coca-Cola Fountain Sales was McDonald's. I knew quite a few McDonald's franchisee owners that were Black that were doing extremely well. And so I decided, well, I was going to look into becoming an entrepreneur as well. I remember when I was at my job in corporate America, there was a gentleman that lived down the hall or that worked down the hall from me. And let's assume his name was Joe. He was a white guy. He was 56 years old. And Joe came to work every day at 9 and left at 5. I got to work every morning at 7 and I didn't leave until 7 in the evening. And about 4 or 5 months into my career, my supervisor called me in the office and said, Ron, we want you to pack your things. And I thought they were getting ready to let me go. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And they said, nothing. We want you to move to Joe's office. And I said, well, where's Joe going? And they said, Joe's going to be reporting to you. That day, I said, I got to get an exit strategy because I didn't want to work another 30 years. I was 27 years old. I didn't mind working 12 hours at 27 years old. Joe knew his customers. He knew the business. He was successful. He worked from 9 to 5 because that's what he had to do. But when they said Joe was going to work for me, most people were excited for me. I said, no, I got a plan to get out of here. So then I went to work at McDonald's in the evening from 8 to midnight. And I learned what it was like to be an entrepreneur. I learned what it was like to manage other young people that were making minimum wage and working at school and working this as a second or third job in many cases. And so I understood what it was going to take to be a successful entrepreneur. I took that understanding and knowledge, took it back home to my father's business, and I grew it from, like you said, $150,000 a year to becoming one of the largest Black janitorial firms in the country.
How did you give that up? I mean, that transition from a very successful entrepreneur to advocacy, basically. I mean, that's really at the highest levels, advocating for us, but that's a huge That's a huge leap.
Well, I ended up getting there a couple of ways. The first way, I ended up reading a book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
Yeah. Reginald Lewis.
Reginald Lewis. And
Right.
I had a vision board that I had created that I was going to double my firm every year. So to go from 150,000 to 300 is not that tough. To go to 300 to 750. Okay, you got a few city, state government contracts. Went to 750,000. Got a couple of commercial contracts. I got to 750 to 1.5. Ultimately got to 3 million. Became 8A certified, which was a program set aside for the government businesses.
Right.
I got there and became $7 million and did not know how I was going to double. Ended up finding a firm in San Jose, which is now called Silicon Valley, that was doing janitorial service in the tech industry. They weren't letting any Black businesses participate. After reading the book by Reginald Lewis, I decided, well, I'm going to buy a firm. I'm going to find the right firm that had all of the requirements that I was looking for. I spent about 6 months finding the right firm with the right clients. I knew everything about this firm. I had made several offers to who I thought were the owners of the firm, only to find out that they were just the nephews of the owner. Finally reached the owner on Thanksgiving Eve, and he said, oh, no, those are just my nephews. I own the firm. He said, I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. And I said, I've been writing letters, and this is before email, so I was faxing letters. I was putting letters in FedEx packages and driving it down there to them so that they would open it up. I was trying to be creative and doing all the things that I read in your books. Eventually he said, if you can come down in the next 45 minutes, I'll give you an opportunity to tell your story. I drove down there, course of about 3 or 4 hours. We negotiated, went through all the numbers. I ended up buying his $7 million firm for about $350,000 plus one additional payroll. Got a $7 million firm for a little less than $1 million, and I was off and running. Got to about $15 million, and I had the world's largest janitorial service, American Building Maintenance, which was in San Francisco, and they eventually acquired my firm. And I then ended up becoming an employee of theirs, and that just didn't work for me, George. I had put Thanksgiving dinners on people's table. I had grown people's businesses independently, and all of a sudden, I'm like a parent, and I can only really just kind of take care of your children. They're not your children anymore. You can just babysit them, but you can't spank them. You can babysit them, but you can't hug them. And I just felt like that was contradictory to everything I had done to grow the firm there. And so I ended up walking away, moving to Phoenix, Arizona, because I had a non-compete that I couldn't do business anywhere I was doing business currently. And I wasn't doing it in Phoenix. Moved to Phoenix, loved Phoenix. Wife ended up dying in the process. So me and my two sons ended up moving to Phoenix, Arizona. And I got involved because I just wanted the network of other Black businesses. And after my wife died, the chamber gave me the opportunity to lead. And I made the commitment then that if they committed to me during the process, then I would commit back to them once I got through the process. And so ended up becoming the president of the Phoenix Black Chamber. We had a Democratic governor, Janet Napolitano, who was close friends, was the first governor to come out to endorse then Senator Barack Obama. He liked to play golf. I liked to play golf. We had an opportunity to meet, and I supported him. And he said he would not forget us. A lot of people say things, he didn't. There was a need for a new voice for Black businesses in Washington, D.C. So we started the U.S. Black Chamber in March 2009. At the time, we had about 6 chambers. Today, we have over 145 chambers in 42 states, plus Canada, Durban, South Africa, Morocco, and just signed an MOU with Congo in Africa, and over 322,000 Black-owned business members. So it has been a great ride. I can't say that I would have envisioned it, but George, I know you believe in vision and you believe in saying things. I remember praying on a Friday night saying, Lord, I know there's more for me. I felt like Satchel Paige. I was like, Lord, if you just give me one more inning, I know I could do it. I just didn't feel like Phoenix was the last call for me. And when I got the opportunity, the next morning I woke up and I got a phone call from a mutual friend of yours and ours who has passed now, a guy by the name of Aubrey Stone. And he said, Ron, we're thinking about opening up and starting a new Black chamber, and we want you to go to Washington, D.C. and start it. And without hesitation, I moved to DC with my sons, and it has been just a tremendous ride. And I really feel.
How many years now? How many years now?
It's been 11 years last month, March 2009. Yeah.
That's right. And so, the role of the chamber, and where would you like to see it, let's say a decade from now? I know it's inch by inch, but a decade from now, what if you could wave a magic wand, where would the chamber, what's the role of the chamber, and where do you want them to be in a decade?
So to answer the first part of the question, the role of the chamber, I remember when I first came to Washington, D.C., and we have these double-decker buses, and they give you bus tours. It was right in the middle of the winter, and I remember riding on the back of the bus and looking down at the license plates of our cars, and it said on the back of the tags, taxation without representation. And I thought to myself, that's what Black folk have been. We've been paying into a system that has not represented our best interests. And so the role of a chamber primarily is based on what we call our 5 pillars. And the first one is advocacy. I have learned that in Washington, D.C., it really is about your voice, what you represent, and being true to that voice. When I first got here, I remember where we were officing, there was a suite right across the hall from us, and it was the Sugar Beach Growers Association. Everybody has somebody lobbying for their best interests, except for Black business owners. Right. We've had great organizations.
Is lobbying another word for advocacy?
Pretty much. It's a fine line because lobbyists get paid to do exactly that for a particular industry or business. Advocacy is where we represent a policy concept, a constituency, a mission, and we advocate on behalf of that. Very close, but a thin line. But the U.S. Black Chamber's first and foremost mission is advocacy. I was a business owner, and George, I know you talk to a lot of business owners, and their number one concern for all business owners is access to capital.
Sure.
But you have a Black business owner, they will say their number 1, number 2, and number 3 concern is access to capital. And in a situation like what we're going through right now, advocacy and access to capital are extremely important. And I think we'll spend a little bit of time this evening talking about. Our third one is really, if you ask everybody else what they want, they say, I want a contract. I want to grow my business. And so we look at that from where is the government spending its money and how we can make them do better. Where is corporate America spending its money and how we can make them do better. And then most importantly, George, where are Black people spending their money? And I know you have a lot of passion about that. I know I've been with you and Maggie Anderson to talk about, the Black dollar. Usually we talk about the $1 trillion of Black spends that African Americans have, but that's usually not us talking about it. That's usually white people saying, Black people got $1 trillion. How can we market to them to make sure that they get their share of that? We're saying we have $1 trillion. How can we keep that in our communities? How can we develop our communities with that $1 trillion? You know that if we did that, we'd be the 15th largest economy in the world. We just got to be able to give tools and resources for Black people to do that. I grew up in Oakland, and there was an MLK Street and a Malcolm X Street. Every Saturday, you could go and find businesses to shop at, and that's what my parents did. Today, we just have to use technology, but we can still do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our fourth one is entrepreneurial training, and it amazes me that the average size Black-owned business is $74,000 a year. And what happens is people say, I'm a great baker. I'm a great, I make great soul food. I'm a great barber. I'm a great seamstress. And they say, I want to go into business for themselves. And they say, great. But they never continue that education. 90% of businesses have no continuing education.
Mm.
But the 10% of businesses that are doing above $1 million, I'm sorry, 100% of the firms that are doing above $1 million, that 10%, all of them have continuing education. They're all either taking some kind of online class, face-to-face class, they're listening to online presentations like this, they're reading, they are always educating themselves because they understand what they learn to open the door is not going to be enough to keep the door open, and most definitely not enough to drive more people in the door. And so we say entrepreneurial training is extremely important. And then our last one is chamber development. Again, when we first started, we had 6 chambers. Today we have over 145. And I always say, I'm only as strong as my weakest link. I'm only as good as the smallest chamber in the country. I need to make sure that they have the resources, knowledge, and relationships that they have, that they need to be able to move their communities forward. So that's the role of a chamber. In 10 years, I'd like to see the Chamber of Commerce be self-sustaining, meaning I don't have to worry about corporate America making philanthropic donations. I want us to be able to have our own revenue streams so that Black people are supporting Black people so that we can have even more freedom to say and do what we need to do without anybody else hindering or using leverage over us. And so if that means that we need to create our own CDFIs and our own banks and our own businesses, and we need to be making sure that we're supporting one another, that's where I see the future starting of the U.S. Black Chamber. And secondly, I think our voice can even be more impactful here in Washington, D.C. in reference to policy to get across the country things that are important to us around the country.
What would be the status or the state of Black businesses in America? If you were to give the state of Black businesses micro report, what would it be? I mean, how would you assess it? How would you assess its health? Is it on oxygen? Is it out of the modern fetal stages? Is it growing? Is it healthy? What do you see? You have your fingers on the pulse of it. What's your feeling about it?
You know, George, and you've heard the president mention this a lot. We had a great economy prior to COVID-19. And we did, but Black America.
Well, Blacks benefiting from that, I mean, on the real?
Yeah, I think we were, and I'll tell you why. And I'll first give you a story. I was at the transition meeting when Trump was coming in and Obama was leaving, and they bring all of their Black organizations in together to meet with the Black leadership team of the new president, new administration. And I remember them saying, in essence, Black folk, you had your turn. You had a president for 8 years. So whatever you were going to do, you had your opportunity to do it. Now it's about women. And remember at first I was thinking, well, I'm offended because I'm a Black man who is representing Black business. So why would you say that it is just about women? But then I left the meeting and I thought, well, we got sisters and wives and daughters and nieces. We need to think outside the box and say, well, let's support and figure out what are the advantages that women businesses have and make sure that we're taking full opportunity for all of those. So I say that to say women businesses, particularly Black women businesses, were doing extremely well during this last period of growth. When I started the U.S. Black Chamber, there was 1.9 million Black-owned businesses. Today, there's over 2.6, almost 2.7 million Black-owned businesses. So the growth has definitely occurred in reference to the number of Black-owned businesses. I was part of the leadership team of an organization called Black Wealth 2020. And we had 3 primary initiatives. The first one was to increase the number of Black homeowners by 5 million by the year 2020. And we're very close. The second one was to increase the number of Black-owned businesses from 2 million to 4 million. That was the goal. We felt like we had.
Over what period?
This was 2014, 15. So we were saying we're going to give ourselves a 5-year run rate to try to capture these goals.
Mhm.
And we were doing fairly well tracking. And we were also going to double the revenue of those firms. So at the time, it was $75,480 was the average annualized revenue for Black-owned business. We wanted to double that to $150,000. What has happened is the growth rate of the businesses is still there. The annualized revenue has actually decreased. So it's went from 75,000 to roughly 55,000. But that's because most businesses don't start January 1st. So that amortized revenue, you may start November or December, and you're only going to have 1 or 2 months worth of revenue that's got to be amortized. So we don't know the new numbers in reference to revenue for Black businesses, but I will say we anticipate losing somewhere between 35 and 40% of the Black businesses due to this pandemic when we come.
They just simply won't return.
Simply won't return.
Yeah. So this is, I want to ask you this question and still be loved, and I want you to be transparent, honest on it. Because there's been criticism that President Obama, who I love, has not done as much for Black businesses as Donald Trump. Is there any truth to that?
First off, let me say, I think what a president does is he doesn't direct contracts to a particular sector.
Not at all.
He creates a mood and an atmosphere where it is good to do business with a particular sector or industry. And what President Obama did was made it very feasible for Black businesses to have success because I think our voices were appreciated. I think the country was more inclusive and diverse. I can't say that for this administration. I can say that under this pandemic, and I'll say this, under this current CARES Act and all those stuff that you've been hearing about, you will never see the words Black or African American.
No.
This was a small business piece of legislation. We had to fight to actually keep it race neutral because we had a president that was such a racist that he was calling the pandemic a China flu. So the Asian community was out front saying, if there was any type of set aside, if there was any type of love given to one nationality, they needed it the most. And we said, wait a minute, I understand you guys are having issues, but we've been having issues for 400 years. So there's no way we're going to let anybody get in front of us on any particular case as it relates to funding this country. So we kept it a small business. That was the first wave of dollars. In reference to Donald Trump doing anything more for Black businesses, I can't say that he has. One of the things that we wanted, particularly in this piece of legislation for Black businesses, is many of our successful businesses are doing business with the government. But the government is a notoriously slow paying entity. Yeah. You can get a contract on June 1st and may not get paid till September 15th. Black businesses don't have the float to be able to carry the government's accounts payable. So we said, well, we want to make sure that we re-implement the quick pay, prompt pay, which was implemented during the Obama administration. If you invoice June 1st, you were going to get paid June 15th, which was extremely important to small and Black-owned businesses to now be able to have, I got cash flow. I don't need a line of credit from a banker. I can cash flow a business myself. I can grow. I have the flexibility to make sure that I hire and need and can get the supply chains that I need. This administration did not see that as being important. We also know that under this new TPP status, we fought to make sure that small businesses that we own, you could write off or you could incur the cost of a 1099 employee. Many Black businesses, if you look at the 2.7, don't have employees. There's only 120,000 Black-owned businesses that have an employee at all.
One of them. I want people 1099.
1099. So you can't write that expense off. You know, you can't include 1099s in your payroll protection program because the whole concept is we wanted you to make sure that you kept your full-time employees paid. Well, Black businesses do a lot of subcontracting and a lot of 1099s, which was detrimental to our small businesses being able to participate in the payroll protection plan as well as the idle loan. So I can't say that this administration has been more friendly to Black businesses by any stretch of the imagination. And I will also say this, part of the challenge is the lack of transparency and accountability from the federal government. You can ask the federal government how much money they have spent with Asians. They will tell you they don't know. You can ask how much they spent with women. They can tell you the exact number. How much they spent with veterans. They can tell you the exact number, and Native Americans. But you ask them how much they spent with Black-owned businesses or Hispanic-owned businesses, and they'll say, well, that's discriminatory. We don't keep those numbers. To me, that's ludicrous. There's got to be accountability. If you're going to say that any administration has done anything better than the previous one, you got to tell me what the previous one done and what you've done as well, so that there's some metrics involved in that conversation. And right now, there is none.
The PPP and the is it EDIL? Programs. What is going on with them? You clarified one thing. If you are a 1099, you've been employed with a Black-owned business, you basically can't qualify them in the PPP program, right?
Right.
That was not allowed. I know you lobbied for it, but it wasn't allowed, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Part of, let me just say, this whole process was to keep employees on the books of their employer. The idea was the government would give your tax dollars back to the employer to make sure that they didn't lay their employees off or furlough them or cut their hours. So the idea was to give you 2 months of your payroll so that you could keep your people on board until we hopefully got out of this process. There was a $2 trillion package that came out a few weeks ago. Everybody was excited about it. I wasn't. Of that amount of money, of the $349 billion that everybody was talking about, 50 firms took $250 billion of that. So there was only $100 billion left of the entire package. And the majority of those 50 firms were publicly traded firms, like the ones that we've all heard of, Rooster Chris Steakhouse and
But
Sugar Shack.
with small businesses, how do they define a small business?
The definition of small business is really 500 employees or fewer.
Right.
So that is a wide range of, and then if you're a franchisee, they don't count the total numbers, they just count the number of each one of those franchisees. And so many restaurant chains that you saw around the country were taking advantage of it by applying for each one of their locations, collectively going after the money. So that's why you saw some of these chains getting up to, upwards of $10 million. But they were, because of advocacy, because of the citizens of the country said, no, why should they get the money? Many of them returned those dollars. Now, we understood that the big companies were going to get that money up front.
Right.
This package that's coming out that actually was signed yesterday by the president is really geared more towards the small business owner, the self-employed, the 10 and fewer employee businesses. That's where we have to participate and make sure that we are ready. There were some guidelines in this that kept us out of play. And the first one was you had to go back to your existing bank, and your loan officer. Well, the majority of Black businesses don't have a loan officer. No. We may have a teller that we know. We have a check account, perhaps, maybe a debit card.
I don't have a loan officer, right? But I know my teller really well, and he knows
me. Your teller.
And we conduct our business with ease because we have a friendship, but that's the extent
of a friendship, right? But that teller can't say, yes, George, I have your PPP money here. That has to go through a loan officer. And most Black people did not know and didn't have a relationship with a loan officer So by the time we heard that there was going to be a PPP or an EIDL program, we had to go establish a relationship at a bank. And oh yeah, guess what? The bank was closed because of social distancing. So now I got to go online. Many of us didn't have the access to the online information that we needed. So by the time we got through the process, the money was gone.
Yes.
I'm telling people now.
12 days. It was gone in 12 days, right? Something. Yeah.
And for those that are listening, the money that is going to hit tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. will more than likely be gone by Tuesday night. So for those of you that are listening, I tell you this, and I really mean this, go to your bank yesterday. Make sure that you have your documentation, that you're filling out the information online, that you're calling them, that you're following up, because that is the process. You have to have a relationship with the bank. You already got to be in the queue. And those businesses that have received some notification from their banks saying, yes, we received it, we're just waiting on the funding to drop. Those are the businesses that will get the funding coming out in these next 3 to 7 days, 3 to 5 days.
Yeah. So it's not going to last very long, but are they going to focus on small businesses, you think, or is it just going to be same old stuff?
Two answers. Yes, they will focus on small businesses that are already in the queue, George. And then those businesses that aren't in the queue, or let's say get denied, what they need to do is go find what's called a CDFI, a community depository investment financial institution. That's a black bank. That's a local CDFI that's a non-traditional lender. Those are the folk, we carved out $60 billion of that money and put in their hands. And so those small business bankers are now saying, we have funds that have not been allocated. That's where we as a community need to go find them. Black banks, many of them are certified SBA lenders. They understand many of our challenges and they're looking for our relationships. We did a survey last year and found out that only 33% of Black people have a credit card. So this is the time for us to establish banking relationships, because George, this isn't going to be the last pandemic. We're going to see situations like this in the future. And if we don't have those relationships or we can call on those banks to get involved, we're going to once again be left out. There will be perhaps another round of funding coming on in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I tell our businesses now is the time to go establish who you are, establish your paperwork, make sure that you're getting in front of the situation. There will be some contract opportunities as well that come out of this, because this is really more of an infrastructure stimulus package to try to come back in many of the cities and towns across the country that have really need infrastructure. And this president has been talking about an infrastructure bill for a long time. This may be the opportunity for him to do some of that. And it may be our opportunity as well to get involved with some of these contracts coming down the line.
And I was looking at some U.S. Census Bureau Black business statistics. They report them every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so your numbers were spot on. They report 2.6 million Black-owned businesses over the last 5-year reporting period, an increase of about 35%. They also report that there, of the 2.6 million Black-owned businesses, only 111,000 of them have employees. And those that have employees, their growth in terms of number of businesses is up about 17%. And the average annual revenue of those 111,000 businesses is about 1.3 million a year, and that's up 82%. So that's the good side. That says then, on the downside, is that leaves 2.59 million sole proprietorships. That's up about 125%. Much of that is really Black women starting new businesses. About 40% of that, about Black women starting new businesses. But the average annual revenue of these sole proprietorships, Ron, is about $18,700 a year, which is below the poverty line. That number is down by 11%. And you just said the statistics, it's probably those sole proprietorships, in spite of the growth, that 40% of those are not going to return to business. There's no money for sole proprietorships. Is there money for sole proprietors?
Yes. So the PPP, and this is what I want to tell people. This is where I think we have an opportunity to participate. As a sole proprietor, you can apply for the PPP as well as a sole proprietor. What they will allow you to do is to take your annualized income. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. You pay yourself $100,000. You amortize your payroll to yourself, $8,300 a month. You multiply that times 2.5. So you're going to come out with somewhere around $17,000, $18,000. That can be your money. The critical thing, twofold, 75% of that money needs to go back to your payroll. And people, you have to be able to document that you paid yourself. Because if you can't document where that money was gone by the end of June, then you have to pay it back. So I want to tell people, this ain't, oh, I got a check from the federal government. I'm gonna go buy, some new equipment, or I'm gonna go buy a new car. You have to demonstrate how these funds have been utilized, and if you can't, the government is notorious for coming back, knocking on our doors, asking for that money back with interest and penalties.
So that's
yeah,
good. So sole proprietors can, but you have to but you should be able to document that with your tax forms and all that, right? Sure.
As long as we are doing that, then yes. But I know my community many times will say one thing on paper and be well intended, but just don't have the backup documentation when it's time to actually have to present it.
Gotcha. That's good. What is the current political vibe in DC right now, and where are the opportunities for Black people in spite of all of this stuff?
That's a good question, George, because I mean, we've all heard the old saying, we don't have permanent friends or permanent enemies, just permanent interests. And for me, and in Washington, DC, I really feel that to be the case. What I have attempted to do since I've been here is to be able to take policy that is created in Washington, DC, and create a relevance to the local business or citizen in the local community.
Mm-hmm.
So often we think there's a disconnect, like, well, what happens in Washington, DC doesn't really impact me unless it's a time to vote or maybe during the census. And I try to tell people there are things happening every day in Washington, DC that can make or break you. But because of the fact that we're not educated on it, and not even so much in education, it's a communication gap. We're not talking to each other. We're not sharing it and making it relevant to us. I'll give you a great example. When this PPP came out, the white firms had conversations with their clients early on because they said, hey, you gotta go to your existing bank. They were able to call their clients on the phone. They were able to call their banker on the phone, get the information, and make the deals flow. For us, we had to wait until we saw it on the news, get it a couple of times on the radio, and then act. We've got to be more proactive, and we have to understand things that are happening here are relevant to you there. And there's got to be people in the middle like myself and you, George, that can actually convert policy into something that's relevant. So I think the atmosphere, the tone here in Washington, DC right now, under normal circumstances, you'd see, your two candidates out around the country telling their stories, campaigning, having large rallies and of the sorts. You won't see that this time around. So it's going to be even that much more critical for us to be connected, to understand where our values and priorities are. I think under times of stress like this, you also get to see good leadership. You get a chance to see how people act under stress. You get to see a lot about their decision making. And we've seen it every day on the news here over these last couple of weeks that this is a volatile leadership team that we have right now. And I think it's up to America to make a decision on where we're going to go. I don't think this is a black or a white thing right now. I really do believe it is a big money versus average citizen conversation. And when we see that collectively, especially as Black people, I think we have the numbers, we have the influence as well as the relationships to be influential. And then I think the other thing is we don't look outside of our boundaries of America to see where prosperity lies. And I really believe that this is a global conversation. And as you see Black people around the globe really starting to work together, communicate to each other, there is not a thing that we have to worry about as Black people, because we have the numbers, we have the intellect, as well as the relationships. We just got to start to build on those. And over the last 8 years, you've seen a lot more Black people visiting the continent of Africa, tracing their roots to Africa, talking about opportunities across the diaspora. And I really believe there's more opportunity for Black businesses outside of the United States as much as it is here in the United States. So we just got to really look at how we move when we come out of this as well on the political side.
Yeah, no, that's hugely important. How can people join the chamber? What you want them to join their local Black chamber? Is that how that works? To tell us how people can get in touch with you, and again, if you could wave a magic wand and have our viewing audience take an action step or two, what would it be?
First off, I would love for your audience to go to our website, US Black Chambers, usblackchambers.org, and I'm sure you'll see it there on your social media post. We're an advocacy organization that's working on behalf of Black people. No question about it, we're unapologetically Black, and our voice around the country needs to be heard here as well as locally. So if you're a local business, join your local Black chamber. If you're a local entrepreneur, we're interested in having your membership. We're interested in supporting you. If you're doing business outside of your just local community and you're trying to do business across the country or across the globe, join the US Black Chamber. Again, we do national reach for large businesses.
You have a membership program. You have the US Black Chamber has a membership program.
There's
you
150.
Join the US Black Chamber.
Yes, you can join US Black
NAACP, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes, so $150, just like you join any other association as a member. And that goes a long way for us as well as for you, because when you have an opportunity to look at expanding your business, or you need capital, or you need your voice heard, that's what we do. And if you're a larger business, we have our President's Circle. But I would love for everyone first to go at least log onto our website, see the things that we're doing in reference to the CARES Act. It's usblackchambers.org/CARES-Act. We got resource guides there. We got access to capital. We got introductions to the Black-owned banks around the country, because we really feel like we need to have them sustainable. And we would love to see more Black people banking with other Black banks, spending other money with Black-owned businesses. And we would ultimately just ask everybody to support other Black-owned businesses around the country.
Sure. Brother Bedford, did we have any burning questions that popped out before we let Ron go? We still have we really basically have 1 minute, but if there's something burning.
Yeah. Time flies. Linda, she definitely hit me and said, wow, 5 minutes left. Ron, you covered a lot of ground with a lot of the questions. I'm sure there's some specific things that people would like to know, but I think you covered so much. My request, George, would be probably because we do have quite a few questions, but they're kind of in the ballpark of some of the things that you were touching on. Things like, what did you say about 1099? I do not have any employees. You kind of covered that, but they want some more specific action steps on what they need to do. So we may have to have you back and do a Q&A, because we have around 20 questions here, that are kind of all around in that space. One question that's kind of outside of that periphery though, and you just kind of touched on it when you mentioned Africa. A young lady wanted to know, what type of business opportunities do you see coming up out of this pandemic?
That's a great question. So first off, 40% of all Black businesses are in the industries that are hit the hardest. Hospitality, leisure, beauty, nightclubs, entertainment. So a couple of things that we're doing at the U.S. Black Chamber. Each week we are having industry sector conversations. So we will have a industry conversation on restaurants, and we'll show restaurant owners from across the country that are having challenges as well as successes. And we'll talk about where there is policy that will help, and then as well as what is the future of that industry. And so over the course of the next 8 weeks, you'll see us doing hair care, salons, you'll see us doing restaurants, you'll see us doing retail, hospitality, and entertainment in reference to nightclubs and so forth. We feel like there are going to be as many business ideas that come out of this as there will be that are currently going through it. Second thing, I want people to understand two things. One, you hear a lot of folks talking about, we're going to get through this, we're going to get through this. Yes, we are. But we need to understand this isn't the last pandemic. This isn't the last scare. I tell Black people, we have a better chance at going out of business by being hacked. Just on my laptop, wow. If I'm hacked as a Black business owner, 95% of the chance I'm going out of business. There ain't no reboot, refresh, I'm done. I'll give you a good funny story. A friend of mine, basketball player in the NBA, has a brother who got pulled over after leaving a game, had his cell phone with him. The police officer said, "Oh, you have an outstanding warrant." They took him to jail, booked him, and he said, "Okay, well, let me just call my brother and get out." When they took his cell phone, he couldn't remember any cell phone. He couldn't remember any numbers. He had to stay in jail for 30 days because he couldn't remember a phone number. How many of us have all of our information on a laptop or on a desk that isn't backed up? If and when that happens, it's over for us. We need to have better thought plans of how we're going to get through this, but more importantly, what are we going to do when we come out of this so that we don't have this type of scare in the future? Hospitality is going to be critical. Maybe now we'll be doing more Airbnbs than hotels because of the fact that we now feel like I'm safer in someone's home. Transportation took a big hit, but there's going to be a different type of transportation. Uber Eats is one of the fastest growing markets right now. While restaurants are suffering, Uber Eats came out. What's wrong with having a Black Uber Eats or a Black mobile salon industry or a Black hair care product line that's mobile, that can come meet you where you are? We need to think about things that are outside the norm and how we can do business more on the internet going forward, but also how to make sure that we are taking care of the information that's on the internet so that if and when a scare does happen, we'll make sure that we have sustainability.
That's awesome. George, I have one more question before we get ready to go in. And this is kind of, you touched on this earlier, Ron, and you and I talked about this a couple years ago, but you talked about your own personal experience, the opportunity for acquisition. A lot of people, when they come to me, come to George, everybody has an idea and they want to start their businesses from the ground up. Can you just kind of give us I know you can't do a deep dive on this, but the opportunities for acquiring business in this climate coming up?
Yeah, I think businesses are going to be available. Real estate is going to be available. There are going to be firms out here that are going to say, I took a hit financially, I got to let it go. And there are going to be tremendous amounts of opportunity. That's why I say having a great banking relationship is first and foremost for most Black businesses, because when the opportunity presents itself, it's not that you just got to have money, but you got to have a relationship with a bank that can get you the money that you need to be able to grow your idea. I'm not one of the believers that says, I want multiple streams of income. I'm a believer in saying, I want to put all of my efforts into this stream of income and make it be the best stream I can be. And in order to be able to do that, I got to take advantages of the opportunities. I have to have good relationships with financial institutions. And I got to keep my head down, working hard, and making sure that I'm making the best relationships I can around the country, as well as around my local communities.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. Good advice. Good advice. Well, I knew it. I knew you would be a hit. And I knew you would give us some very valuable and timely information.
This is rich.
I think for all of you brothers and sisters out there that have sole proprietorships, and that's the overwhelming majority of our businesses, at least at this moment, he gave us some powerful information on how you can qualify for the PPP, even as a sole proprietor. But you got to have your paperwork right, and you got to get on it now. And most of that money, if you properly, dot the I's and cross the T's, most of that money will be forgivable. So take, as Ron said, it's going to hit the banks tomorrow or Monday. I think the president signed it, yesterday? So there's money out there to be had. You just have to be diligent. You have to do the work. You have to focus, because it is intense and time sensitive. You're going to have to wait and get, you're going to have to, they're going to put you on hold. I just know from the stuff that we have been doing from our offices in getting all of our paperwork in, it's, but it's there, and you need to take advantage of it. So whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you are you have employees that you pay, do the paperwork, get the money. It's there for you. And they're looking as hard for you as you are looking for them. The heat is on for some of that to dribble down to small businesses, especially Black-owned businesses, and we certainly deserve it. Ron, I can't thank you enough, man. This was really great, awesome information. As Brother Bedford had suggested, we may even have you back to begin the process of just answering questions, some of the questions. And you covered most of the stuff that people are asked questions on. But, the key to learning is simplicity and repetition. Sometimes you just have to keep repeating it. And, but we may look for a date to bring you back in the future, if you would be so kind to do this. This is valuable time. Fortunately, we have a little time right now, and why not teach, and why not reach out to our people, and why not reach out to the community? You have probably put into the pockets and ultimately the bank of at least several hundred Black folk who are watching, out of the thousands that are watching, that may amount to $200, $300, $400, $500, $1 million, just in some of the simple tips and information that you unpack for us. So thank you for that. Brothers and sisters, for those of you who know the Power Networking Conference, you know that at each of these podcasts, we do a crazy offer. We limited it to 5 people. I apologize to those because every podcast, it goes over 5. So if you don't hear from me, you know that you went over the 5. When you do hear from me, because you hear from me directly, is simply, hi, this is Dr. Fraser. You've won the lottery. That's really how when I call you, that's what I said.
You sound like the PPP. You sound like the SBA, George.
That's right. Forbes magazine named the Power Networking Conference one of the top 5 conferences in America not to be missed. There will be over 1,000 attendees. As you know, we moved the conference to October the 14th through the 15th. It was just the safest and smartest thing to do, being that we have the highest propensity to die from the coronavirus. But there will still be over 1,000 attendees at the Hilton of Americas in Houston, Texas. Ron has blessed us with his presence and his presentation and his brain power on a number of occasions at the Power Networking Conference. So there'll be 1,000 attendees this year. There'll be 50 speakers, 40 workshops for intensive training. As you know, we are a training conference. We do not pontificate ad nauseum about our issues. We really get down in the weeds, and we are about training in really just two areas: business development and economic development, financial education, financial literacy, and bringing our people up to speed with what we need to know about capitalism and the proper management of accumulated wealth. So we talk about wealth, we talk about business building, whether you want to start a business, whether you want to help grow your business, whether you are looking to make connections to develop strategic alliances, joint ventures, or partnerships. That's what we're about. There are over 30 interactive spaces at the conference. There are 2 stages, there are 4 meals, and it's one amazing experience. It's a life-changing experience. So the offer is good for the first 5 people. I'm going to tell you how you're going to get it and how I'm going to determine who they are. It's real simple, but let me tell you what the offer is. This is the flyer. You can go right to powernetworkingconference.com, www.powernetworkingconference.com, and see the entire schedule. It's a beautiful website. All the workshops, all the speakers, everything is on that schedule on the website. So an adult registration for our conference is $1,500. If you met one person, as I like to say, that could help change the trajectory of your business or life, would that be worth $1,500? Absolutely, it would be worth it. You're going to meet more than one person. We encourage all of our grown folk to bring a young person. We should be conferencing with our young people so they could sit at the feet of masters like Ron Busby. So we have a student price. It's $800. So $800 and $1,500, a student and you, is $2,300. So for 5 people who will win the lottery tonight, we're going to reduce that by $1,900 and reduce the price for you, an adult, and a young person 17 to 25 to $399. It costs us more than that to feed you at a 5-star luxury hotel. So the first 5 people, here's how it goes. You email me, gfraser@frasernet.com. That's gfraser@frasernet.com. Put in the subject line, I'm in. Put your name and your cell number in the body, and email me at gfraser@frasernet.com. The first 5 people that do it get that special offer. I will then call you personally, and we will chat, and we will close the deal. So that's our offer. Get on it now. Take advantage of it. Again, I want to close by saying, Brother Bedford, always great. Great to see you and great to be with you. And Ron,
Yes, sir.
you are thebomb.com. Really, you're just a generous, woke, conscious brother. And we are lucky to have you running the U.S. Black Chamber. I hope you retire there. I can't envision you. I can't envision you doing anything else. That's your legacy. That's going to be your legacy, right? You're going to have a marble statue in Washington, D.C., right, as the legacy leader of the U.S. Black Chamber. So we love you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And join us Tuesday, Brother Veteran?
Yeah, Tuesday with Randall Pinkett.
Dr. Randall Pinkett.
Randall, man. I had him speak at my conference a few years back, George, as you can remember. And he was a huge draw and just a wealth of information. So I'm looking forward to hearing him next week as well.
Randall's a beast, Rhodes Scholar.
Yes.
And he used to talk a lot about, he was the first Black person to win The Apprentice, the real Apprentice.
Yeah.
Not the celebrity apprentice,
Yeah.
right? Took real brain power. He won the first black person to win that apprenticeship. He's just an incredible mind and an incredible personality, woke and conscious like brother Ron. So he'll be with us on Tuesday. So brothers and sisters, thank you. You have a good evening. Thank you for joining us. We went a little bit over with a special guest. So Ron, thank you. You be good. Everybody, good night.
Good night,
Take care,
George.
Ron.
Thank you, Brother Bedford.
Talk soon.